My name is Dr. Rick Seguil.
And action. Hey, Jay, this is Kirk again. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, founder of Herbal411.com, bringing to you our first Coach's Corner podcast. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Rick Seguil. I'm an integrated medicine doctor, also a coach, and a cannabis certifier in the state of Illinois. And I wanted to introduce you to Mike Richards, who is our first interviewee. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Dr. Rick. It's a pleasure and an honor. There's nothing else I'd be rather doing today than hanging out and talking to you with your first podcast.
Thank you very much.
So congratulations also, by the way.
Hey,
I know
is
that
great.
you've been doing videos for a long time. We've even done talks together. So to actually officially be involved in your first podcast is an honor.
Could you introduce yourself to the viewers and subscribers?
Yeah, so you already said my name, Mike Richards. I'm the owner of MBC Services, so M for mind, B for body, C for cannabis.
Nice.
So three things that keep me well and what I love in my life. So at the business, and this is something that I just recently started, I've had MBS Fitness, which was another business of mine for many, many years. But recently I got involved with cannabis and tried to, use it to make my health better, a lot of success. I was a professional in the corporate cannabis world for 7 years and then decided to go rogue and start MBC Services. I offer coaching, I offer consulting, I do freelance for some of my buddies in the cannabis industry, and really, I love educating people just about cannabis, mind, and body.
This is great, Mike, and congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
And I'd love to pick your brain about your experience with the industry, I guess, if you want to put it that way,
Yeah.
because it's great. I think since 2016, when Illinois became legal for medical and recreational cannabis, it was definitely, I think, a very helpful option for some patients, for most patients, but not everybody took advantage of it, and we can probably talk about that as far as our newbies having apprehensions. But as you will probably explain, and I can explain, I've had many patients have great results, and with less side effects than hydrocodone, fentanyl, or some of the medicines used for inflammation and mood disorders. So we can get into this, but those of you who are not subscribers, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the alert bell, because we will be doing other podcasts and I'll do other videos as well. So let's get into it, Mike. So as I mentioned, 2016 was when Illinois became legal.
Yeah.
And those of you who follow me, I take folks out to Colorado for hikes all the time to experience 14,000 feet and get into some decent training. But going to Colorado or California, any of the dispensaries out there, they have the product in front of you. They just have a wide variety of different options.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm not sure about you, but I have a little gripe. Since 2016, it was really limited. I mean, there's always, I guess, going to be the number one product, which is going to be flower that you smoke, or you can burn it in other forms, like a volcano, or there's vape. And there's shatter and a couple other
Concentrates. Yep. So just high potency cannabis oil to take flower to that next level for the ones that like to inhale and smoke.
Got it. And but yet, I was a little apprehensive because when I think I might have mentioned this in an old podcast or an old video. When I was younger, I used to get swollen eyes and short of breath, and I thought, oh, that's great to be high. When I think that was an allergic reaction.
Yeah.
I think. But in using the products now, which I believe are stronger in concentration than back in the 80s, as far as flower, right?
Absolutely.
I haven't had those side effects. Maybe it's because I'm using it properly, or maybe I choose not to do inhale just because I still have that in the back of my mind about the swollen eye, shortness of breath thing. And I found that I used to find that there were enough edible products available, but I'm not seeing that anymore. I'm not sure. Are you noticing that? Well, you were in the industry. If you could.
Yeah. So much to unpack from what you just laid out there on the table. So let's start off with Illinois in 2016. So in my opinion, Illinois was late to the party, like you had referenced out on the West Coast, right? So it was 1995, 1996, where California passed Proposition, I believe, 256, that was the first medical program that we had. So just imagine, 20 years, a lot can happen in 20 years. So when we see those states out west, there are a lot more mature programs. They've been operating for 20 years, 15 years. Where if you look at Illinois, 2016 is where everything launched off, and we're 5-6 years deep into that program. Now, and I like to use the garden hose analogy. So when you first turn on the garden hose outside, it's going to spicker, it's going to sputter, but eventually a smooth stream of water starts flowing out. And what I've seen from my professional experience, we've done a lot of spittering and spuckering in Illinois from 2016 to now. So, just looking at programs out west, really any state that starts a medical program, it's done out of compassion. Right, so if you look back in California, there were HIV patients. There was a nurse that was going and making her own brownies. She was bringing them to the patients because they were giving them relief. Like out of all these drugs and things that they were giving, the brownies that she made is what gave them the relief.
I heard the story.
Yeah. Mary Jane, they call her. But that's how this all started back in California, out of compassion. And when you see states that start adopting, and really, that's the sort of trajectory of how cannabis works, right? So there's compassion, there's a need, there's people with debilitating conditions, and then you see a medical program start. And then that, spitters and spuckers, and then eventually a state goes adult use or recreational cannabis. So, we're in the infant stages in Illinois, but to your point, there's been a lot of stagnation with what we're seeing.
More so, Mike, than have you opened up any other, like New York or Colorado places?
Absolutely.
Have you seen a faster acceleration of getting up to speed, I guess, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, so, each state is different how they run their programs, but generally, to become an operator, and when I say an operator, either dispensing cannabis, cultivating cannabis, processing cannabis, there are so many things that you have to do, and there's a lot of deepness in your pockets that you have to be one of these operators. So, state by state, like Illinois, it was very limited licenses. Not a lot of people got licenses out of the gate. Now, when they did start expanding the program into adult or recreational use, the people that were already operating got first opportunity to open up adult use from their medical facilities. So there hasn't been a lot of competition, and the players that have been operating the industry in Illinois have been doing this legacy for the last 6 years. We haven't seen anybody new come to the party. Now, I don't know if anybody heard, it was just today that they announced the expansion of the program. They're releasing 185 more licenses in Illinois to social equity applicants.
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, so basically, what I just sort of described. Okay, I need a lot of money, I need a lot of funding to open up a business in an industry that has been incarcerating people for who knows how many years.
Right.
So, a big term and a big emphasis on the industry now is making sure that it's equitable, making sure it's diverse, making sure that people that potentially can't as easily get those pockets as deep as they need them to be have an opportunity to actually thrive in an industry to be successful.
I just want to make sure I'm getting this. Is that mostly for underserved areas, or just to any area that they just want to give more licenses and probably make more money?
Yeah, so what they did is they released another round of applications for people that wanted to operate. And if you were from an underserved community, if you were a veteran, if you had previous experience with incarceration on your record, you got extra points than other people.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they, sort of made sure that there was diversification with, what was going on. Now, that's just Illinois. Every state is different. So if you look at Oklahoma, if you have $250 and fill out a one-page application, you could get as many licenses as you want.
What do you have to have here? You said you have to have deep pockets. Just about a license to get a license.
Yeah, so the licensing fees, and then the escrow accounts that you have to have and prove to the state that you have the funding behind it, securing the real estate. So a lot of the times what they do is they make sure that you have real estate secured before you can operate. And when there's a gray area of when can I open my doors, who has an opportunity to secure real estate with an unknown projection of 6 months, maybe my store will open, 12 months, maybe my store will open.
Oh, that's a big roadblock.
Big roadblock. So, and Illinois, from what I've seen from 2016 to now, has sputtered. Like I said, that garden hose analogy. But we're finally at a place now where 185 new applicants are going to be opening dispensaries, and we're going to see changes in the industry very shortly.
Hopefully, because the guys who are the cultivators that were grandfathered in probably didn't have any competition unless it's amongst themselves. So now you're going to have a big wave of smaller mom and pop places, maybe.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that, to your point earlier, the limited product really, and from my experience, it's we only have so many products that we can put on a production line. What are the ones that sell most? And to your point that you made earlier, flower is king. 50% of the cannabis users that go to dispensaries are buying flower. Edibles are going to be that next category. Now, a lot of the times, the tinctures or the products that were originally put out for medical patients, just supply and demand, right? So when they have an excess population and they're all asking for flower, it's going to be very hard for them to stop their production line to make that 1-to-1 CBD THC tincture for that small niche population that's going to benefit from it.
I've just imagined this. I've never been to. Can you say where you used to work?
I'll keep it agnostic.
Okay,
So,
that's fine.
an MSO. So, for those of you that are familiar with the cannabis industry, MSO is a term that you hear get thrown out. So that's multi-state operator, or the Walmart of cannabis.
Okay.
The big guys.
Okay. So when you said that the whole production to produce a tincture of some sort, and a tincture is an oil-based cannabis product that comes from the plant but is processed a bit so you can use it, get it absorbed, and get it to your inflammation or your brain where you calm anxiety down without inhaling, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just for edification for newbies that are out there, and we will address that status, there is the inhaled tract, whether it's any of those things I mentioned before. There's also the oral or digestive system that edibles go through. That could be capsules, tablets, tinctures, gummies.
Yeah, food products. Everything under the sun they put cannabis in nowadays.
All right. And then there's a topical, which I think sucks. I'm sorry, but compared to, I'll tell you a story about what happened to me in Colorado. And then is there anything else that I missed?
No, that covers
Topicals? Okay, that's it.
Yeah, and then in each of those categories, you have subcategories. So, like, for example, in the inhalation, you have either flower that Dr. Rick had mentioned. You could smoke, for the traditional legacy cannabis users out there. You could smoke in a joint, you could put in your pipe, you could put in your bong. You also have vaporizers, so the concentrated oil that you're inhaling a vapor instead of actually combusting the flower. And then you have concentrates, which are going to be a very higher potency. So, like, the concentrates are sometimes double, if not triple, the potency of flower.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which, that's what how I try to view cannabis from both ends of it. So you have the medical, which, I use cannabis medically. It's helped me put my condition in control, also with your help, Dr. Rick. But there's also a recreational component of cannabis. And in my mind, the recreational component is important for harm reduction, because I would much rather have somebody that I'm coaching or working with go home and smoke a joint than drink a six-pack.
That's a good point. Harm reduction. Because of other things that some recreational applicants or shoppers would be seeking out in the cannabis community or the dispensary versus other recreational drugs or legal things. Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I do have to mention, especially for the newbies, that if you're 50, 60, or 70, then you probably remember Cheech and Chong. I definitely remember Cheech and Chong. In fact, I had a video.
Chong? You went to a video with Chong?
Tommy Chong gave me a thumbs up when I started. I forget when it was, but that was so cool. But everybody remembers the big comedies, and they made light of it. But it's not just that. I mean, you don't have to get high. You can if you want to, if you need it, but there's definitely some very therapeutic ways to use this product.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that most patients, or I should say most people that are out there, patients or clients or just average Joes and Janes, they know of indica and sativa. So when I ask a patient about which strain, what's the name, what's the fancy name of the product that serves you most for sleep or for calming down anxiousness, they only come up with those two. But I really think there's a deeper dive for identifying. In fact, I believe now with the hybridization of the botanists, You can have a sativa that's sedating.
Mm-hmm.
You can have an indica that's very stimulating, or the hybrids in between that are declared hybrids with this and this.
Yeah.
So we have to empower our folks to be better shoppers. When I first started, I was a little apprehensive, and I was doing videos, so I bought a lot of product just to do an unboxing. I still have that stuff from like 2016. Some of this stuff is still, like candy is rock hard now, but...
Hey, if you need somebody to throw it away for you, I can help you with that.
Yeah, that's funny. There are these green garbage cans in the airport that are called cannabis amnesty things. I never understood that, but anyway. I think that people should be decent shoppers. If I just tell somebody, I want you to practice the Ornish low-fat, plant-based dieting.
Mm-hmm.
Just to declare yourself a vegan is one thing, but you got to know, I'm not just going to eat plants. You have to know exactly how you're going to perform, how you're going to cook, what kind of ingredients, how long to simmer, what are you going to bake. Mm-hmm. So I think being a well-rounded cook so that everything that comes in this way serves you properly is important in the kitchen. But this is a medicine.
Yeah.
I know it's recreational, but it's also a medicine. So, and that's, I think, the dichotomy that makes people really confused. So I have an 80-year-old that I just spoke with, and I said, this is what I would do if you were to go to the dispensary for your wife or yourself. Try this. He said, I don't want to go there. Can you go with me? Because I don't know what his idea is. He's probably thinking there's a bunch of people with tattoos and smoking and bikes outside. But you know as well as, in fact, the one place where you used to work, which we'll not mention, that was very nice.
Yeah, very clinical setting.
Right, very clinical, very clean chrome glass, and polite folks, the what you call bud tenders, who work at the places like that. I think it's a very nice place to experience. Some people, I think, would get intimidated, especially if there's a long line and you get up there and the salesperson asks you, what can I help you with?
Yeah.
And then, I'm not sure, I've got fibromyalgia. And they can't really give you, I guess as a salesperson, you didn't work sales, but they're not supposed to give you, or can they give you ideas? Or they just can't talk about medical disease?
Yeah, so, the same sort of rules apply to a bud tender as they would with an unlicensed professional, a personal trainer, coaches, things like that. So, we could give recommendations, but at the end of the day, there's certain questions that get asked where it has to go back to your doctor. When you start asking, okay, when do I stop this medication, or what do I use for my fibromyalgia? That's where having somebody like you, Dr. Rick, is going to be very important. Same thing goes with the bud tenders. Now, from my experience, and one of my missions, moving forward with, whatever I do in my life in the cannabis industry, is to get bud tenders to the level of coaching. So what I mean by that, a lot of the times you go into a dispensary and they know the products back and forth, right? But really, what good is it if they know the products if they don't know you? And that's not their job, is to know you. Yeah, you're going to have a superficial relationship. Hey, how's your day going? High five. Oh, the Cubs won. Oh, that's great. But people like you, coaches like me, what we do, we know our patient first, and then we have our education and know our business or our product like the back of our hand. Where the bud tenders, they know the product like the back of their hand. They know their own personal experience of cannabis by the back of their hand. And that's a lot of the times the lens that they have when they're dealing with people, making recommendations, which is fine, but we can do better, right?
Okay,
Because
better.
there's people like you, there's people like me that know these people. We know what their conditions are that they're dealing with. And you could say to somebody, okay, I know that you've been having trouble with your liver. Maybe you should get that, an ALT, AST score before you start taking the edibles, right? That conversation never happens at the
Very
dispensary.
nice. Right. And plus, they probably don't have time.
Correct.
I'm assuming it's like the doctor office where ideally doctors are supposed to figure out who's in the room. It always comes down to dollars and cents, and the longer you spend, the less the value of the dollar.
Yeah.
So typically, and it's not for everybody, not all doctors or nurse practitioners do this, but I think most people are in and out in about 15 minutes. And I have seen some fast turnaround at the dispensary. I'm sure that shoppers know what they want, they get it, and they leave. But that just promotes anxiousness, especially when I first started going. I don't know what to get.
Yeah.
And then if you go indica or sativa, okay, you just kind of narrow down 50% of all the products where do you go from there?
Yeah.
And that's why I think your service to the community is very valuable because you're a level higher than a bud tender. You have the education of being in industry. You have the education of being a consumer. You also have the education of a medical patient. So that anecdotal, N of one, this is what I used for my disease process. I think it's very valuable. But then you have the next level. So, and I will put since it's going to be a rolling podcast, I'll put your information on how folks can reach you at the end or in the comments section down below. So
Absolutely.
Please consider reaching out to Mike Richards or myself if you need some help. I have the website too, and we're here to help you and educate you to be better shoppers. I think that it's always like a community of sorts.
Yeah.
So when I see new patients, although it's the patients coming in for certification has really decreased, and I think that we should probably talk about that. Newbies probably think, I don't need a certification, I just go.
Yeah.
But I do believe there's value to, even though the products, you're hearing my ranting here, but the products, I'm hoping that what you're saying, that with the new licenses coming in and more mom and pop stores, maybe giving better quality time, will threaten the big guys, which always has to be a little bit of an issue, threaten the big guys to have more diversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's going to, so I didn't know about that, so thanks for bringing that up. But the newbie, we should probably talk about the newbie, the experience of like my 80-year-old. I actually told them, okay, I'll go with you, just we'll have to arrange it, my schedule's a little busy, but I will go with you so you don't get intimidated.
Yeah.
It would be great one of these days to have like a concierge kind of service.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, 100%.
Right. Yeah, if we can maybe service to a nursing home. And honestly, this is not to get high. This is to relieve, my thinking, at least the part that I would use is to relieve disease.
Yeah.
And another patient, his wife is on 3 hydrocodones per day. And she's constipated, and she's tired. And she can certainly be constipated and tired from other things, but number one side effect from hydrocodone is that.
Yeah.
And there's still, I just posted on my Facebook page, there's still fentanyl deaths happening in the United States. Fentanyl is a painkiller too. And there's deaths. There was just a release from Florida that the deaths, there has to be something done.
Yeah.
So there's a release just to doctors, but I used to be in Florida and they sent me the bulletin anyway. But I just think that there's a little apprehension. How would you have, if somebody is a newbie out there, meaning that you have never experienced cannabis, not even in the 80s, 70s, and you are suffering and you're just tired of side effects, how would you counsel a new client that seeks you out?
Yeah.
How would you counsel them on starting?
Yeah.
Say they have arthritis, probably high blood pressure. What's a common thing? A little bit of diabetes controlled, and then beginnings of dementia. Or forgetfulness, not really dementia, just forgetfulness. How would you introduce this to them?
Yeah, so my first question would be has your Dr. Rick or has Dr. Rick said that you are okay to be using cannabis with what you're currently doing, right?
Got it.
So I think that's step number one, and I have so many people that come to me, and I'll ask them that question, newbies that have a bunch of debilitating conditions, and they're on this medication, that medication, and I'll say to them, have you talked with your doctor about this? Oh, my doctor doesn't know anything about that. Okay, so I think to myself, okay, you're going down this journey by yourself without even a medical professional to give you peace of mind that, okay, adding another thing to my regimen is not going to do more harm than good. My goodness. So that's my first question. Have you had Dr. Rick clear you, or do you have a Dr. Rick that cleared you? And by the way, Dr. Rick, I don't know anybody else like you, so usually that's a no. So definitely that's the first thing, because cannabis is not for everybody, right? Everybody's physiology is different. Everybody has different preferences, aversion. So the first thing is, if you're looking to treat and start cannabis with medical conditions, severe medical conditions, Crohn's disease, Alzheimer's, like you talked about, you definitely need a medical professional like Dr. Rick to make sure that you're going down the right path to start. The second thing would be, before you even step foot into a dispensary, you need to be educated before you go in there, because like Dr. Rick said, It is a bit of an overwhelming experience, especially once adult use started. It's busy in there. There's lines. There's a bunch of people. You're trying to have a conversation with the bud tender with 3 other people waiting behind you, and you're looking over your shoulder. So walking into that dispensary for the first time, I would empower somebody to be educated to know at least what they're looking for or what they're not looking for. So question number 1, what is the method to get cannabis into you that is going to work with whatever you're trying to treat and the conditions that you have and your preferences and inversion. So like back to what you said earlier, we have inhalation, we have ingestion, and we have topical. So to walk into a dispensary knowing I'm looking for an inhalation product, knowing I'm looking for a product that I can ingest, knowing that, oh, I have skin issues, I never want to apply a topical, is going to be extremely important for somebody.
Okay, so a little bit of not a laundry list, but some dedicated ideas about where we're going to apply this, what we're going to try to take care of.
Correct.
What's in the way, too.
Correct.
And to your point in the beginning, getting clearance from your doctor. I mean, one of the reasons I left my previous hospital was because they didn't like doctors certifying. Mm-hmm. And I got all the certifications, and anyway, I probably shouldn't go down that route.
That's another podcast. That's podcast
Right. Podcast number 2. But so that's a problem because most docs are either cannabis naive, or they really don't like cannabis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there's already a disdain. So asking somebody that might be neutral to against it is. I don't know. That's to me that sounds wrought with error.
Yeah.
But I guess they have nobody else to go to. So, well, unless it's terminal.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I do have some patients that come to see me, not as much as before, but they only have a couple months to live, and they're nauseated from the narcotics, or they have time to live that's undeclared, but they're just from the chemotherapy, they're just wiped out, and life is not good. And you got to get them past that hump to hopefully get them better.
And I think that's a good point that you bring up because, first off, the world is a hard place, and none of us get out of here without any bumps and bruises. So what I mean by that is that we all have something that we're dealing with, whether it's depression, whether it's Crohn's disease, whether it's recovering from cancer. So, I see it as a journey, right? And there's a couple different phases. So you have a medical condition that is currently not controlled, right? And then the next step is you have a medical condition that you're in maintenance and you know how to maintain, or at least you know how to recognize when that starts getting out of control so that you can do tactics and strategies to get you back to maintenance. And then you have the third part, which is, okay, I'm in maintenance and I'm enjoying my life, and now I can consider potentially using cannabis recreationally if that's something that I want to do. So anybody that's in that first bucket where it's an unmanaged chronic condition, they have to talk to somebody like you. They have to. They're just shortchanging themselves by getting themselves as a newbie involved in a cannabis regimen without having a conversation with you, Dr. Rick. And, we're friends and we've known each other for a while, but I'm not just saying that because of that. It would be foolish for somebody that's a newbie that's in that first bucket to not talk to somebody like you, in my opinion.
Or you, if they can't reach out to me or they want a different viewpoint. I kind of always attack it using data or anecdote. So and sometimes I go on a riff down this road of integrative medicine. Here's your supplements, but you might be more succinct and very tangible within the realm of going in through that door and knowing. Because if you ever go to a place, I always tell my patients check out the inventory first. Know what's in the inventory. Pick out something that you want or the effect you want. But when you go online and you look at the products, it just has a couple stars if it was a well-liked product, and then a little bit of a blurb. And sometimes it doesn't even give the breakdown of THC, CBD, CBN, CBG.
Yeah.
So, and that itself is already limiting. So it is a learning curve.
Yeah.
But I think you will be the one to help bring down the learning curve so it's not so steep.
Yeah, yeah.
I can certainly provide the medical aspects as far as you got to, like you said before, ALT, AST there are two blood tests that are found for liver function, and if they're off, CBD and THC go through the liver, and you want to make sure that you're not already with a fatty liver that's stressed, and then you introduce a new medicine, because it is a new medicine, but again, it's got less side effects than the majority of medicines that people are on.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for the newbie, like you said, to get some help. And I would always, this is probably not necessary, I would always practice shopping. I mean, because a lot of people don't know how to swipe. I mean, just that alone, because when you go to the place and you check out the inventory, the salespeople will give you a tablet. And they'll say, what can I get you? And there is a search bar. So I'm sure there are some people that are in their 70s.
Yeah, and nowadays, you pull up one of those menus, if you go to the flower section, you have 100 plus options. If you go to the edible section, you have 100 plus options. So there's a lot of choices to make.
Right.
And being a newbie, I mean, that's very difficult.
Right,
I mean,
right. Just like going to the grocery, if you're going to be a vegan because you had a heart attack or a doc said your cholesterol's too high, go eat a lot of vegetables. You go to the vegetable section of Whole Foods, everything looks like it's cool crated and all in line. It's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
So, and the dish could taste terrible if you don't know how to cook. So what do? We watch TV, we read recipes, we ask parents if they're still around, how do I do this? You're going to be the parent.
Yeah.
So people can go to you, hopefully, and get some ideas. But so with the experience, I think we've talked about the experience, we talked about really the use, and I do believe, like Mike has said, that let's throw out a couple things. I mentioned cholesterol, arthritis, maybe mood disorder. Arthritis for sure. There's great information outside the U.S. because it's still Schedule 1 in the U.S. So that means that the Fed has always said for 40 years that cannabis is useless and addictive.
Correct.
Kind of the same category as some really bad drugs, speed, cocaine, heroin, which I really disagree. I mean, if you look at the data from Israel, there's great therapy with some of the cannabis that they use in Israel, and data that's coming out of Israel. And I have to go to outside the U.S. to find this stuff, or Canada. Yeah. Because Canada started with hemp and Epidiolex and legalizing hemp, which is a cousin. I don't think it's as good, sorry, my hemp distributors, but I really think that when you have THC in a proper amount, you can really take advantage of the benefits of the weed. There's great options. It's just a little confusing, but I'd say even arthritis, if you're apprehensive, I'd say topical, although the topicals in Illinois need a little bit of help. If you have guidance, I might go towards a high CBD, lower THC, that's the ratio. For those of you who are newbies, the ratio of certain cannabinoids. There's like 144 cannabinoids out there.
Yeah,
something like that. But the biggest ones you'll hear about are THC, and then there's CBD. But there's a whole bunch of other ones. I just did a video on CBN for sleep, and thank God there are like 5 or 6 different products I was able to find. Yeah. I bought them all up as I didn't go through I've only used Snoozeberry or Snoozy-er-berry. Yeah. And I think it works great. Yeah. I mean, having good sleep is really important. Number one, for preventing recurrence of cancer. So there's studies that show women with breast cancer who survive the breast cancer, if they get less sleep than 6 to 8 hours, the chances of having a second recurrence is higher. So I think we kind of poo-poo sleep. I think it's great, especially when it comes to exercise, getting the most bang for the buck if you're trying to use lifestyle change to get off of high blood pressure medicine and exercise and losing weight, building muscle, which we'll probably talk about soon. But sometimes just to get sleep, there's products out there. To get inflammation control, might have to work that a little bit because some places have. There used to be a couple different products I like, high CBD, 20 to 1. And I really don't think. Have you ever seen anybody get a little bit psychoactive with 20 to 1?
Not really. I mean, I get the comment, relaxed. They felt relaxed, but never high, so to say. Got it. With a 20 to 1 ratio.
And when it first came out in 2016-17, when I was making suggestions, I used to give people homework sheets. I still do. And I would go and put the exact product, but when they would go to the dispensary, I have one lady who is a 60-year-old, and somehow she got an RSO product. And that the typical RSO Rick Simpson oil product is, I think it's very concentrated, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, yeah.
And the rumor is if you put a half of a rice grain bead under your tongue, that should be fine. But she went to the emergency room, poor lady, and she is apprehensive. She does not want to try anything now.
Yeah.
That's a terrible experience, almost like PTSD. I'm sure she was feeling high, maybe more than high, because you can get a little bit of a paranoia too with the wrong combination. So,
and I think that's the benefit of somebody getting into this with guidance. Or with support, because the last thing that we want to see is somebody have a bad experience and then just totally close off to the potential benefits that cannabis can give them, either in the moment or down their life. The brain doesn't forget that.
right.
Having that traumatic experience. So that's what we try to avoid, or that I try to avoid as a coach with new patients, is that we don't want you to have that negative experience, and we will give you the guidance and the support to make sure that that doesn't happen.
We probably have to do another podcast.
We always say that every
just
time
on,
that we
yeah,
get together.
really. Just on the certain diseases, and maybe that's what we should do. We'll pick a disease of the month, and then we'll see which products are available, and maybe do unboxings together, or talk about products.
But to your point, because that we would see that all the time, and especially with the stagnation that we saw in the Illinois market, you would go on the website, you would find 2 or 3 products for your patient, they would go to the store the next day and they wouldn't have them. So that's where the empowering a cannabis user to be self-sufficient with knowing what they need and not having to rely on, okay, what happens if this isn't here? So really the way that you do that is knowing what your cannabinoid profile and knowing what your cannabinoid ratio that you're looking for is. So what I mean by that, say Dr. Rick recommends a 1-to-1 green apple gummy. You go to the store and they don't have green apple, but maybe they have a 1-to-1 chocolate. Maybe they have a 1-to-1 cherry, right? So you're an educated consumer where you could make that synapse sort of connect in the brain, okay, this exact product isn't here, but because I know my cannabinoid profile, because I know my cannabinoid ratios, I can make a substitution and still get the same benefit that I was looking for. Now, same thing like we said earlier, the sativa, the indica, that's so outdated, and that's just marketing, in my opinion, at this point in the cannabis industry.
Interesting.
So knowing the terpene profile, right? So if you're an inhalation person, and Dr. Rick says, go get Alien Jack, and you go to the store and Alien Jack is not there, but you know in your head that it has linalool and that it has myrcene, then you could look on the menu and say, okay, what is another terpene profile that's comparable to this? And even though Alien Jack is not there, you find another strain that's going to give you the same benefit. So really being self-sufficient and being educated to the point where you know your cannabinoid ratio, you know about your terpenes, and in my opinion, that's going to sort of combat the problem that we have, which is going to a dispensary and a product that worked 3 weeks ago is not available.
Right. Oh, man, that is awesome. Great information. I used to suggest, I probably should, keeping a cannabis diary and then putting, this is what I used to do when I first started. I would have a journal, get the sticker that came off of the box, bottle, or tube, put it on there, put the date, and then the effect.
Yeah.
And the price in case. Because if I went back a couple months later and I could easily say, oh, that sounds familiar, give me that again. And then if I check my diary, it's like, oh, no, that got me high. Shoot, I just spent $30. And I just wasted $30. So then that's important, too. Because if you see the bag that I have at home that's like this big and I can't use them anymore and I just use it for props for my videos, that's trial and error, and we want to have people avoid that. Not only to have the bad side effects, but also to save money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and that's where microdosing, we probably should, your knowledge base is awesome, by the way. I loved how you just rifled through that. I was like, whoa, apple, okay. They're kind of weird, and I guess they're invented or named as per the botanist that makes the strain, or the seed, I guess. And then the cultivators in Illinois have to pay that person for the seed? Is that what happens?
They could source their own genetics. They could decide what they want to bring in. But, to Dr. Rick's point, the strain names, I mean, there used to be, some pretty concrete strains that everybody recognized. So the Maui Wowie back in the day, the Thai back in the day, the Sour Diesel, the Blue Dream. Nowadays, I mean, with just the advances that have been made in the cannabis industry, everybody's crossbreeding, cross-pollinating, making their own strain, getting it to grow, bigger yields, this, that, and at the end of the day, when they do that manipulation on a genetic standpoint, they stamp whatever name that they want on those things.
Because you mentioned terpenes, some people might not know what exactly that is and where to find it on the label if they are looking for terpenes. Can you explain terpenes?
Yeah, so terpenes are what give cannabis smell, fragrance, taste. Terpenes are also found in fruits and vegetables. So like, for example, a common terpene that you'll find in, I'm going to use the word indica, but more nighttime-based strains is myrcene. That same terpene you get in mangoes. So terpenes are, all of us deal with terpenes on a daily basis, but as they relate to cannabis, a lot of the times we don't make that connection, or we don't think about that. So, like, for example, if I had 2 strains of cannabis in front of me, I could smell one and be like, "Ooh, that smells like a skunk." I could smell another and I could be like, "Ooh, that smells sweet." And the reason why is because there's different terpenes that are in the plant that work in conjunction with the THC and the CBD for more of an entourage effect, right? So that, I know in previous videos we've talked about that, but the entourage effect with cannabis is all of the parts of the plant working together for a synergistic effect. Mm-hmm. So it's not just an isolated THC, it's not just an isolated CBD, it's the combination of those cannabinoids with whatever other trace cannabinoids are in that product in conjunction with the terpenes that are found in it. So really, long-winded answer, but really the terpenes are what makes something smell one way and something smell another way when it comes to cannabis. And your nose knows is what I always tell people. So, if there's a smell that's pleasant to you, from my experience and from working with people, that's going to be a strain that is going to be beneficial for them, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's for medical. So the whole scent, profile of the cannabis has a direct correlation with the terpenes that are in it.
Got it. So entourage effect, remember that. There's in my world too, there's also the ensemble effect where you can have the plant itself, and after it gets inside, mostly with the digestive or edible parts, if you happen to have a decent amount of omega-3 oil in your diet, if you happen to have a decent, I don't remember I can't come up with the exact probiotics, but those two things, omega-3 oil, probiotics, accelerate the effect and make it long-lasting in the gut. So that's the ensemble effect. Or the opposite can happen too. If you have a couple beers or wine or another liquor of some sort, and then it makes you have diarrhea or it makes you push everything through, which usually has a toxin. It does get people relaxed, but if it makes you push things through, that stuff that you just ate edibly is going to go right through, and you can't predict how is it going to affect you, or will it affect you at all?
Yeah.
So, and again, I guess I have to talk about the ensemble effect with narcotics. If you have hydrocodone, Tylenol with codeine, tramadol, which slowed down the gut, how will that affect your edible?
Yeah.
Or if you have constipation and you only poop once every couple days, will you be affected more than definitely? So there are, I don't mean to bring up these other roadblocks, but we don't have to accept them as roadblocks. I think we just have to, again, empower our patients to know, okay, there's a couple things we have to know about, or at least let me do the driving, but I need the information first.
Yeah.
So as a coach, we probably should know who's in the room, what their makeup is, what they're looking for, what kind of roadblocks or bad side effects can they potentially get into, and then steer them clear of that.
Absolutely. And I think also, too, it's directing patients, patients and people that are using cannabis. So people that are using cannabis for medical reasons, people that are using it for health and wellness. In my opinion, intention and awareness are two of the most important things to use it for medical or to use it for health and wellness. So when I say those, so first thing, intention. What is your intention for using cannabis? So, and I don't want to assume that people have an intention for using it. A lot of people are on autopilot that are going to those dispensaries. They've always used cannabis. That's just what they do. They go to dispensaries. They smoke their joints. They smoke their weed. So for newbies and anybody that's using cannabis for health and wellness or for medical reasons, you should have an intention with it, and you should clearly define that, whether it's through affirmation, saying it in your mind to yourself, whether it's writing it down in a journal or a piece of paper. What is your intention for using this cannabis? The second thing is awareness, right? So this isn't the type of medication that you're just going to take the edible and then not have to think about it, right? I mean, that's what everybody wants, right? They want the magic pill. They want to get better. They want to get the six-pack, but they don't want to put the work in some of the times, right? So when you start utilizing cannabis for health and wellness or medical, you have to have an awareness with once you consume cannabis. So what I usually tell people, like for example with that edible that you're talking about, if they're constipated, if they have diarrhea, well, they need to pay attention to, okay, what are the effects of that 5 milligram edible that I had 1 hour ago, 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago? And not just on that time that they're using it, but over a period of time so they can see trends and patterns, right? So I'm constipated for the last 3 days. I'm taking my edibles. I'm not really feeling anything. I am the opposite of constipated for the next 3 days. I'm taking that same edible and holy cow, I'm out of my mind. Like, what's going? So that's
Awareness.
powerful information for people to realize, and you could never get to the point where you're realizing that if you're not aware when you're using cannabis. Long tangent, but in my mind, those are the two staples for anybody. What is your intention with it, and have an awareness when you're using it. And this is something that you've hammered into my head. Don't change too many things at once, right? So I have a lot of people that start a cannabis regimen while they start their exercise regimen, while they're starting a different diet. Like, how are you going to figure out what worked at the end
Too
of the
many
day?
variables.
Too many variables.
I think that the society now, great points, intention and awareness. Society now is wanting immediate gratification.
Yeah.
So, and I've had many patients when I think in my brain, this new guy, this new gal, she would be great to use cannabis. But then I ask, I tried it, it didn't work. And I tried it and already there's a pushback, so I don't ask any further, but if I do, it's like one dose.
Yeah.
Either it didn't work or they got high.
Yeah.
So adverse side effect, I guess. But that's where that awareness would be important. And if we're not sure about what to be aware of, then we need that mindfulness that we can instill on our clients and patients.
Absolutely. I mean, those are the two things that I keep in mind. Like, in my mind, with cannabis, you had brought up the microdosing. The least amount of cannabis that you need for the most therapeutic benefit is going to help your wallet or your purse at the end of the day, right? So what I mean by that, like, that's what we want, is everybody to get the results that they're looking for without breaking the bank doing it. That's not good for dispensary business, but at the end of the day, that's what's best for the patient and the customer, and that's what I try to teach people. So definitely having that mindset is important for people.
And the microdosing is always where I want to end up with patients, but again, with I want to feel this now.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe you have to build up a little bit of a therapeutic level.
Yeah.
And microdosing will be a little slower than immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if we're going for THC, you can modulate either it's too much or not enough because of the immediate psychoactive effect of THC on the CB1 receptors.
Mm-hmm.
But CB2 and CBD, which are CBD is the anti-inflammatory, the big anti-inflammatory cannabinoid. I don't usually see people getting immediate. I'm not sure about you. Immediate knee pain resolve or ankle swelling decrease. I don't see that. So it's a hard marker to use if you're just using that.
Yeah.
That's why I usually say, okay, if we're going to do it, I don't like using too many variables at the same time. In fact, I'm kind of strict. If we're going to just do food, just do one food. And it takes forever, but at least you keep that in your mental diary. How would you, I guess we should talk about microdosing and maybe in the light of lifestyle change like exercise.
Mm-hmm.
How would a person introduce that? Now we're going a little bit away from how to use it for disease, but how would a person that's pretty healthy or stable with their medicines and getting into exercise, how would they introduce microdosing to maybe decrease or shorten the the healing phase of muscle protein synthesis post-exercise.
Yeah. So like you said, I mean, it's not the big bolus dose that is going to, I had a heavy squat day and I'm going to take a bunch of CBD and that's going to help the inflammation go down. That's not how it works. So somebody that's using it for health and wellness, I think it's very important to have that in your daily regimen with the vitamins and the supplements that you might take in the morning and night. I know that you recommend 3 times a day for a CBD dose, day by day. I usually recommend 2 to 3, right? So whether it's just 5 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day for 4 to 6 weeks, I would be inclined for somebody to have the awareness to pay attention. Okay, that workout that I'm doing, maybe it took me 3 days to recover, but holy cow, now I'm realizing that in 2 days I'm ready to get back into the gym. Mm-hmm. So, it's these little subtle things, and I think, with the microdosing, the CBD is going to be great for inflammation, it's going to be great for recovery, but I'm not going to lie, pre-workout, there are times where I might do a little bit of THC, and why I do that is because, one, I might not want to get started. Right. So, and it's funny because when I was, heavily into the personal training, I would tell people, with your workout, I know the hardest part is getting started, but just do me a favor. You have a 30-minute workout that you're planning, regardless of whether you are going to do it or not, just start it. Right. So the first 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, if you decide that I really don't want to do this workout, then you quit. And I never had anybody told me that they started for the first 5 minutes and then they quit and they didn't go through the whole 30-minute routine. Yep. So, and I'm not going to lie, there's certain days where I wake up and I'm like, I just don't want to go do my exercise, and I might take a hit of THC. And that my just mindset changes, right? Let me just get it done. Let me just do it. And I'll notice that I'm more focused during that workout, and I sometimes have a better workout. Now, I want to give the caveat that having that awareness and figuring out, okay, what's the best product to use pre-workout is going to be extremely important, because the product that I use at night to help me sleep is not the same product that I use pre-workout to get my head in the game, so that I just get my workout started, and I know that when I get it started, I'm going to get it finished.
Interesting. And that's the variability with the ratios, the terpenes. So there are stimulating. And that goes back to the old classification indica sativa, which I think I agree with you. That's totally out now. Mm-hmm. So when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I just go for indica," okay, we need some education.
Yeah,
you have to be a better shopper. But that's interesting that you can find your groove, because dopamine and norepinephrine, if they're not there, man, it's going to be so hard to move.
Right.
Even if we know, you and I both know the benefits of exercise and that endorphin and enkephalin high and just maintenance of that. But a lot of newbies, I guess, to exercise, it's like, especially if it's going to be shorter days, darker nights, or darker days, and then colder environment. Nobody's going to want to move anymore, which is, we're in a hurry. We only have 2 or 3 more months before it gets that way, but that doesn't mean we have to go indoors and hibernate. I think if we take advantage of moving now, and that's where I think some of the ideas, that's a great idea with regards to maybe moving and motivation. I think, as you had alluded to, if I could afford it, I would do CBD 3 times a day, every day. But as you know, that's not affordable. So I sometimes will just pick one dose, especially if I'm taking turmeric or magnesium or using helichrysum or something else. But definitely on days where I'm hurting, I will maximize. That will be my rescue. More for me, I would, because I'm a fibromyalgia sufferer. Well, I should say it's in remission, but it's very important to maintain sleep. Part of the 3 things of fibromyalgia are history of depression, 11 of 18 trigger points that are found by your doctor or provider, and then a bit of sleep disorder. And I think of most Americans, as I alluded to before, usually will push the sleep to as little as possible because coffee's there, but that's the wrong thing to do. Or alcohol is there, that's the wrong thing to do. But I have found that CBN and those products that I did the video on really get me to fly right through and wake up refreshed.
Yeah.
The question, and I'm contemplating getting another watch so I can measure my oximetry at night and see if because it's too hard to get a sleep study.
Yeah.
But if I can get a watch, but I think they're too untouchable, too expensive, but it'd be so cool if I can get a watch and compare CBN nights to non-CBN nights just as a N of 1 trial.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of these days. However, I think there's great things that will help not only the disease process, but also accelerate or optimize muscle protein synthesis, restoration, getting back into the gym.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other favorite things of how to apply for folks that are exercising? Cannabis products?
Different products to use? Definitely, anything. Beta-caryophyllene and pinene are the terpenes that I target pre-workout. So, and I usually use the inhalation method because it's going to be very fast acting. So if I'm going to start a workout, I will take one inhalation, either a vaporizer or, I'm not going to lie, I don't mind the combustion. I'm an old school guy when it comes to that. But those are the two terpenes, beta-caryophyllene and pinene, that I look for to give me that just, okay, Mike, you're in the zone, you're doing it, you're going. To Dr. Rick's point, for the sleep, and that's a good thing that you brought up. I didn't even think about that where we're sitting here talking. If you're not sleeping, you're not going to be recovering from anything. And if you're not sleeping, how's your workout going to be the next morning? So myrcene, products that are high in myrcene are a lot of the times going to help sedate you. Linalool, that's another terpene that a lot of the times is going to help you relax at night. Another thing that I'm a big fan of, and it's because of you, Dr. Rick, actually, is cannabis beverages.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? So, one thing, I used to use this as a reward for myself. I would drink alcohol 1 or 2 nights a week. And it was a year and 7 months ago, Dr. Rick challenged me. He's like, Mike, let's go 30 days without alcohol. I was like, you're crazy, Dr. Rick. New Year's here. I'm working crazy, this, that. Screw it. I'll take your challenge. And what I found was the cannabis beverages, right? So I would still go to a buddy's house and play chess, and I was used to having that thing there that I was drinking, and didn't want to get away from that. So I started buying these cannabis beverages. So from the harm reduction standpoint, huge, and I'm still using them today, and I haven't touched alcohol since you challenged me.
Nice going, my friend. But although a great point, and I appreciate you sharing that, I can't find that many, or maybe I'm not looking, beveraged. I used to use Squeeze.
Yeah.
Strawberry.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make it anymore.
Yeah, I've seen it. Like you said, it's not abundant where you could go to any dispensary, in Illinois, and you could just find these products. Like, you have to hunt for them, nowadays.
Okay. So that's very discouraging, but maybe if we get more people to be consumers and we support the industry, maybe demand will provide it. And that's why I really wanted to do this podcast with you, is to educate folks on the beauty of this thing. So to round off our how to optimize exercise, I definitely think that we are shortcutting our sleep, and that's the restoration part. Especially if you guys are doing hypertrophy training, you really need 24 hours. I was talking to a patient of mine who is talking about muscle aches. He asked me about certain cannabinoids, and I asked him, okay, what are we doing? Hypertrophy, power, strength, or endurance? He said, hypertrophy. How often are you exercising? 3 on, 1 off. I think my thinking from old school was, if you do hypertrophy, 48 hours to 72 hours off.
Yeah.
Because to the gene, well, that's old school thinking for me, but the data says the stimulus is there, the gene effect a couple hours after the stimulus is there, and then there's that muscle protein rebuild. But if you hit it too soon, you can turn that into a power gain, but you won't have the blow up or the swollen thing that everybody like, guys especially, but girls too. I think that no one will ever blow up overnight unless you're a newbie and you're like 20.
Yeah.
But I have 50-year-olds that are in my patient-client bucket, and we have probably low testosterone that's really holding everybody back. So trying to hit that aggressively, no. Anyway, there's a lot of things that we have to educate folks on, and sometimes, and no question, not sometimes, all the time, sleep has to be mandated as being refreshing, and you have to put that in your intention to get to sleep earlier.
Yep.
And then nutrition is really important, so that ensemble effect will probably take a hold. But just by committing, because you also train people to be healthy, commit, and you yourself have lost weight.
I have.
How much have you lost?
So it was 360 at my heaviest, 160 pounds. And that was a lifetime ago. That was, 20, 25 years. So what I really love telling people, and thank you for bringing up the story, is that my success was not losing the weight, but it's been keeping it off for the last 20 years. Anybody can take the reservation, but to actually keep the reservation and have a great meal, that's a different story. So, and that's what I try to, empower people with, is that this is a lifelong thing, health and wellness. Right? It's something that you always have to incorporate in some form or fashion. Sometimes it has to be a little bit more, sometimes it has to be a little bit less. But when that slips out of the lifestyle, and I know from personal experience because I have Crohn's disease as well, that's when things go from remission to flare.
Mm-hmm. Right, and we want to stay in remission.
Yeah.
I can tell when this is my fibromyalgia trigger point. This is my barometer. When this flares up, I know. I can easily say, shoot, I'm just going to stretch. But I know that in another couple of days, if I let this go, I'm going to be into fibro again. And I don't like where I was before. Mm-hmm. So it sounds counterintuitive, but it usually means I have to exercise a little differently or exercise a little more or get some sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm sure with Crohn's, too, you can push the envelope, because of what's out there, the fast reward or the pizza or whatever. But if we fall off the edge, man, you got to pull that back. And the older we are, the harder it is to pull back.
Yeah.
But I do think that we are healthier than the average colleague the same age.
Try to.
I hope to stay that way anyway. That's a great story, too. I mean, not that many people lose 10 pounds and hold it off, but to lose how much?
160.
160 pounds?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, they can do that now with bariatric surgery.
Yeah.
But to do it and to maintain it, spectacular.
Yeah, it was funny. I used to have long hair back at the time, too, so everybody would joke with me when they would see my before and afters. Am I going to go bald if I lose weight like you? Oh, yeah, no, they were two separate, so. Right. But still, I mean, that's, I used to say this all the time. Everybody has a success story. Everybody, has something that they're dealing with, and, mine was weight loss, and then it was Crohn's disease, but it's what you do with it, right? So what I've personally chosen to do is to turn my challenges in my life into professional gains. So, I lost 160 pounds. I started a successful personal training business. I was a director at a wellness center. I started my own business with a doctor. I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I started using cannabis. Got a nice successful career for 7+ years with a multi-state operator. So, we all have challenges that we deal with, but it's having the right support, having the right guidance to help you deal with them, but more importantly, turning whatever you're dealing with into a gain somehow. Whether it's a lesson that you learn, whether it's, okay, this flare lasted 3 months, next time it only lasted 2 months, next time it only lasted 1 month. Baby steps, progress over perfection. That's what's the difference between losing weight and putting it back on versus losing 160 pounds and keeping it off for 20 years. And that's what I try to instill with people that I coach and train.
That is excellent. I tell you, we probably have more to talk about in the next hour or two.
We didn't even talk about exercise, cannabis use for mindful exercise. I mean, we have yoga and Tai Chi. I don't even want to open that can of worms today.
Why don't we, if you guys have any specific topics that you want to hear about with regards to medical cannabis and disease, cannabis and wellness, put them down below, and Mike and I will come back, we'll research, and we'll give you our viewpoints, maybe a couple of different ways to attack, to try. I think that's fair, huh?
I would love to.
Excellent. This has been great, Mike. I appreciate you coming to the podcast and
Thank you.
being my first interviewee, although we've interviewed before, obviously, but this officially starts the process. So let's head up this hill together, and then let's educate more patients and clients about how to get better.
Yeah. No, it was an honor, and congratulations. Like I said, it's surreal. I've known you for a while, so to actually have this equipment and doing your podcast, congratulations.
Thanks, Mike. I'll put the link on how folks can reach you, unless you have any announcements or.
Yeah. So mindbodycannabiscoach@gmail.com. So I know it's a long email, but it really sums up everything that I love to do in my life and what I train and coach people with.
Got it. And I'll put that in the description so people can, maybe they can click on it or they send you a message.
Absolutely.
And I think you're also on the Cannabis Coach link as well on my website, so I'll put that up. Those of you who like this, please consider subscribing. It supports the channel. and then the alert button to find out when we perform or do new videos. Otherwise, stay healthy. Thank you for watching up until this point in time, and we'll catch you at the next podcast.
See ya.
Thank you.